No.
Okay, for roadway, I'm going to talk about roadway lighting, inshallah, and bismillah ar-Rahman. So, all these projects that we have, that I deal with most of the time is roadway lighting, usually for the city or for IDOT for the tollway. I guess the first thing we need to consider is the location, wherever the location is. So, for example, we take, let's take out here on 95th Street. Based on the IDS reports, and you get that from either the state or whoever the roadway designer is, they give you an IDS report and it'll tell you what the classification of the roadway is.
As most of the guys probably were not too familiar with the acronyms, so try to, at least the first time when you mention an acronym, try to...
Okay, Sammy, you can chime in on the acronyms.
Okay, we can break it down. Oh, go for it, please. Yeah.
Maybe later on, is this...
So, where was I? Okay, so for example, the IDS is the intersection design study. What it is, it's a report by the civil engineers or the roadway designers that they decide the type of roadway it is. It could be
Major,
minor, arterial, all these different classifications. So you want to get the information from them. If they don't have it, then you go by the ADT. Usually that can be found online. There's a state website, government website, where it has the average ADT is the average daily traffic. So that gives you an idea of how much traffic is on that roadway. The more traffic it is, the higher in classification it goes. So a major roadway would need more lighting than a minor or arterial or something like that. So in the classifications and the lighting levels are, you can find them in IESNA. I don't know the whole acronym.
yeah,
but
that's fine. Or RBA.
Yeah, it's RPA that.
Can you write it in the board?
And it's a good idea.
Yeah, basically what are we talking about, guys? We want to do a design for a roadway. You need to know what kind of roadway is it. Is it a major? If it's a major, it's like by code. You have to make sure you go to a book called RB8.
Yes.
It's code by the government. It tells you the foot candle level
So
on
it's
the
a
street.
guideline.
It is. So you have to follow it. You have to maintain certain foot candle. You have to maintain certain. So you have, it's like a table. You have to go back to it, find out what kind of street you do in the design for, and match whatever they have.
Can you give an example of what's a major, what's the categories of road? Just an example. Highway is a major, for example. Is that?
A highway would be under freeway. It wouldn't be major. It's higher than the major.
Major
Oh,
Harlem.
okay.
Harlem is a major. 95th is a major.
Okay. The highway one, it's a little bit different because
Okay.
if it's classified as a freeway, it's actually not as much as the major, because the reason being that there won't be any pedestrians over there.
Yes.
And it's a constant speed, no lights either, so
Right.
it's a little bit lower there.
Makes
Standard 0.9
Okay.
for the foot candles.
So this is one aspect of it.
So how many kind is the game?
Let me. So we got. And the freeway one is kind of separate.
Can you write like next to which one is like 95, like the 94,
The 94.
the interstate?
Okay, so this
Give
is.
an example.
Yeah, just an example to make it clear. You know.
I-94.
And it really depends on the amount of traffic on the roadway. So a higher major street would be something that can, like 95th runs, or Western even, runs so far, it connects so many streets together. Arterial is something that, like 111, it goes pretty far, but it's not as heavy traffic on it. Okay, and local is just the local side streets that we have, neighborhood streets and all that. So the next point is, what you want to do is you want to figure out the light spacing that you want to do. For example, let's say we're doing, I'm going to give just a random example. This isn't necessarily what's written in the RP8 because I don't have it with me. Let's say we need 0.9 foot candles based on, we looked it up in the road, in the guidelines. We have,
if I may interrupt just for a second, for the sake, my sake and sake, can you define maybe at a high level, how do you measure the lights? What are we looking for? For example, you said foot candles.
yeah.
Just give a brief high level description.
So it's the amount of light that's on
The intensity of the light.
lines on the ground, right? So what you do, if you're going to measure a foot candle, you would take a meter. Actually, there's an app on the phone that can measure it, and you take it and you just put it on the ground level, and you see whatever it measures.
That's your foot candle.
Right.
That's your foot candle.
So that's what it's
Very
reflected.
What's the name of that?
Lux, there is one called Lux. There is one called meters. There is a lot of them.
Just write light meter and it'll come
Yeah,
up.
you will
So
see
The
tons
app
of
store.
So
a
basically,
lot of them free and.
so light is intensity is measured by what's called foot candles.
Yeah. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, what you need is, there's a special software that can run the simulation depending on the type of fixture you use. So if we're gonna do something for a specific project, we gotta know what lights they allow us to use. Because, for example, if you're gonna do a roadway one, they have the overhead fixture that they want all of them to look the same thing. So you have to stick with the overhead fixture. The lamp you can get from different manufacturers. So but there's standard manufacturers that are used for the state, as GE, Hubble, and Kennel. Kennel is listed for underpasses.
Hamad, please don't, forgive me, okay? And what I'm trying to do is so I benefit and inshallah everybody will benefit. For these categories you gave, what are the foot candles that are required as let's say as a minimum, or is there such a thing, or?
For the freeway, it's 0.9 foot candles. For the major arterial and local, I have to have the RPA in front of me to give
fair
you
enough.
numbers. I don't have it memorized.
Okay. But for
And
the
those
major,
are very basics. When you go to the table,
right.
they
Right, so
stated
now-
exactly what kind of foot candle
Exactly.
you have to get.
Okay, so it's that guideline will give us
Oh,
that
yeah.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's besides the roadway classification, you also need to know the pedestrian conflict. So the amount of pedestrians at the intersection or along the roadway matter, because the higher amount of pedestrians, the more
They need
the more
more foot
lit,
candle,
yeah,
yes.
the brighter light you need, so that you make sure everybody sees everybody.
Yeah, you don't want them to run to each other.
Yeah.
And the best thing, we will do a real life example one day. We will pick, a good example and run it so you guys see how we use the software and all that.
Yeah, I didn't really prepare too much for this. Let's just do like a small, step by step. Yeah. you can.
بعد المي عنها محمد.
So let's start with just for example 0.9. Okay, that's we looked up in the RPA book for freeway, and we know we need 0.9 foot candle minimum. So then the next thing we gotta do is we gotta figure out what the size of the roadway is. Okay. So we get the width of the roadway. Let's say it's a 3 lane. Alright, so that's Standard lanes are 12 feet, roadway lanes. So three 12-foot lanes is 36.
36.
Then you're gonna have your median in the highway most of the time. Concrete barrier. And then you're gonna have the other three sides. The other three lanes.
So this is one way, the other way is the other way.
Traffic is gonna go this way, this side, this way, this side. Then on the outside, you have your shoulders. It's another 12 or 15 feet. 12, 13. Usually your center, depending if it's a freeway, usually the center is gonna have a center shoulder, a median, and another shoulder. So altogether, we would have like 30 feet in the middle. So now that you've kind of, you know your location, the next step would be to figure out what the standard light that you're gonna use over there. What does the village or whoever is maintaining this prefer? If they don't have a preference, then you can see what's nearby the area and try to get something similar, or you can try to get something new altogether, and you propose it to them to get their idea.
And this is where we come in. We say, we're gonna give you our light to try it. That's what we did with the projects, we do a pilot. So we're gonna try our light. And I-90, the one they're working on now, there is 5 manufacturers already approved. So if you are a manufacturer, you call them up, you tell them, I want you to try my light. You send them what is called IS file, and you actually the IS file and the calculation to show them, are you meeting the foot candle or not? If you are meeting, then you take a look at it. If you are meeting the foot candle and this and that, they ask you to send them a light. And they go ahead and try to test it.
Alright, so let's talk about the different kind of layouts you can do for roadway. So there's what we call median mounted lights, so you can probably figure it out. The lights will be mounted in the median. So if you're gonna mount them here, you want to light both sides, you want a dual arm. Okay, so
And those options, later on you will see in the software. It's called AGI 32. We have license for it. In the software, you'll be asked to enter all this information. Two-way, street, one-way, where is it gonna be mounted?
yeah.
So all this information, like an input to the software, to do the design.
The other option you can have is single outside mounted. So what would happen is,
Different color if you want.
so your lights will be just mounted on the outside here. And if you, of course, this side we need it too.
So it could be a combination too.
And then the other option could be two rows. So you would have one in the middle, one on the outside. And then same thing here, one in the middle, one on the outside. You could also have some roadways, if it's not a freeway, probably not gonna have the median. Like here on 95th, there's no center median, concrete barrier. So it will be one side. You have to have the lights on the outside. You know, some terms that we're gonna run into is, or
The setback?
yeah, what you need to know about the light pole is the mountain height.
So that's the pole height.
Yeah, it's the mountain heights. It's not just the pole height; it's the pole height plus the arm that's on there kind of extends a little bit higher.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah,
wherever the
some-
bottom of the luminaire is
Okay.
to the top of the pavement. That's
Right.
considered the mountain height.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All the way to the pavement.
To the top
So
of the
if
pavement.
there
Yeah.
is concrete base or something, that's part of it? The pole, if it's mounted on a
Yeah,
concrete.
it's the bottom of the luminaire to the top of the pavement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
Where the
gotta
light is.
factor into how much
Okay.
concrete foundation rises up.
السلام عليكم.
الله يسلمك يا شو.
سامحني بس عشان بصور.
مش مشكلة.
الله يسلمك. على فكرة احنا الله يجزيك خير سامحنا كان كان اكسن في كاسة.
نو مش مشكلة احنا بمسح لك اياها.
خليها بعدين. الله يجزيك خير بارك الله فيك.
اوكي.
اهلا وسهلا.
The next thing is the mast arm. So that's the arm that's mounted on a pole that holds the luminaire over the roadway. Alright, so depending on whatever size that is, 6 foot, 12 foot mast arm. One thing you want to remember is you don't want, depending on the numbers that you get from the when you run the calculation, you really don't want the light over the roadway, because just in case something happens, you don't want that light falling on top of the traffic. So what we try to do is, if we're going to do a 15 foot, if we do a 15-foot mast arm, what you want to try to do is keep that either over the shoulder or further behind. So if I use a 15-foot mast arm, I want my setback to be, setback is usually measured from the edge of pavement, and that's this line here. This is the edge of the traveled pavement, because shoulders, they're not really supposed to ride on it, so your traffic's going to be mainly here. So that's considered the edge of pavement. So you want to have your light, your actual luminaire, behind the edge of pavement. So if I'm gonna, the setback is how far the pole is behind the edge of pavement. So if my mast arm is 15, I would want my setback to at least be 15.
Do they in this case do they up tilt sometimes, or the fixture to you know what I'm
It's
trying to
the
say, because they
design-
compensate, you know, because ideally, so this is my street, I would have it on top of the street, but because of safety issues, I don't want it to fall on somebody. So do they, to compensate, do they do some kind of tilting?
The tilting we do only if the photometrics kind of, for example, if we have a really wide roadway, like 6 lanes, 7 lanes, and it's going to be very difficult for us to adequately light that roadway, that's when we sometimes have to tilt the light so that it throws more light forward,
Okay.
and we don't worry about the light that falls back here.
Where do you do the tilt?
At the luminaire, where it's
No, I'm
attached.
saying
The
as
fixture.
far as the software.
Oh, there's an option for tilt, there's an option for rotate, there's an option for,
Tilt, okay.
or
Uh,
there's
I'm sure it's
3
degrees.
different, yeah. You go like this, like
Okay.
this,
Okay,
and like that.
okay.
So there's 3 different,
Do you guys have any question? يعني even if we record, go ahead and ask question. Mounting height, it's clear. Mast arm, setback, it's clear, everything's clear.
Can you go over the mountain height one more time?
the mountain height, again, it's not the actual height of the pole, but it's height of the luminaire, the bottom of the luminaire. So, Sammy,
Well, that's fine.
When you said
let's
luminaire, what's luminaire?
Is that a
Okay,
fixture?
luminaire is
Fixture.
the light. Okay,
Is the
let's
fixture.
take an example.
you
Let's
could
say,
just use, yeah, so this, the ball, if there was a shield covering this thing, that would be the bottom of the luminaire. So to the bottom, to the top of the
Yeah.
pavement.
So I think the
IIT يا شباب, a real life example, since we're doing this project. Omar is an expert now. At IIT, if you recall, guys, here is our luminaire fixture light.
right.
Here is the pole. That's where we have the cut sheet from Maram. She sent this to us. She said, okay, here is your luminaire. Then she said, it's cut it in 3 pieces. 1 piece like this. Then she said the elbow. Remember, guys? 30 inch.
Inch.
Then there is the arm. That's right.
That's right.
Then, if you guys recall,
Concrete.
concrete pad. But some of them, if you recall, when we went to the
In the
pilot,
ground.
yeah, in the ground. So sometimes they raise it up, sometimes they raise it down. For Muhammad, when you say mounting height, I'm assuming he wants all the way from this point.
I think the
It'll be mountain height, because when I'm saying mountain height, that's what you put into the software to do the analysis. So what it's considered mountain height is wherever the lamp is, the bottom of that lamp, to the top of the sidewalk or the pavement, whatever area
Right.
you like.
Like he showed, like from there all the way to the ground.
Exactly.
I think one of the points that
So if we were doing an office space and you have a table in front of you, it wouldn't be to the ground. You wanna be, because the people are looking at
The
the
table.
desks, it'll be to the table.
Right.
Okay.
But one of the points that when you actually mentioned it, actually it's the mount height versus the pole height, is because in most cases, if you look at the arm, right, it's actually kind of, it's arced. So here's the pole, and the arm is arced like this. So actually there's an additional height. So it's not the top of the height, the pole. It's adding maybe a foot or whatever, I don't know, to it. So that's where this becomes,
Important,
yeah.
yeah. You gotta
So-
consider the whole height of the
Yeah.
pole.
Well, FYI,
Plus the arm all the way to the ground.
most of these information will be given to you. When we tell you do the design for this roadway, you will be given those information. Wala Muhammad. The mounting height, the
mountain height?
setback.
Well, if
Sometimes we have to
if the
collect
pole's
it.
existing, then you can go out and measure. But if you're doing the design from scratch, then it's up to you to decide what the pole height's gonna be to get the mountain height that you need.
That's right.
You would
To
recommend
find
it.
out the foot candle. But if it's, most of the time it's existing.
Yeah, if
If it's existing, you have to
don't
live with
have
it.
too much control.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. You were talking about tilts to add more light onto the highway itself. Are there any drawbacks to that?
So tilt, well, it depends. If you need to light the backside, then there's a drawback. But
Yeah.
if you don't care about lighting the backside, then you can tilt it as you need. And they also just, sometimes there's an issue with, the higher you go, the more the light's gonna spread, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going up, say 70 feet, it's gonna throw a lot of light behind and forward. Okay? Usually when they design the light, it throws most of the light forward, but there's always something that's gonna go back there. Okay?
And I'm assuming the intensity, oh, sorry, go ahead.
For the arm of the pole, is there ever like a Y shape with two bulbs?
Yeah, there's a lot of different configurations. There's the high mass lighting, they have 5 or 6 lights on it. That's 100 feet high, 150 feet high. It's a 700 watt fixture. So they use it to light stadiums or something like that.
What's the biggest you've ever worked with?
Pole at 100 feet. Usually we use the 100 feet for temporary lighting because we gotta stay so far away from the roadways and we still want to
I mean,
actually light the area.
You know, those lights on, for example, I-55, going downtown,
Yeah,
they're so high and they have like around, I don't know if you see
those
those.
are the high mass lighting. That's exactly the high mass.
Is that 100 feet?
Then
I
maybe
think
more than
more.
100 feet.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's more.
They come in different sizes, so you
Okay.
could have 100 feet, maybe it's 150. I wouldn't know until
And what do you think is the wattage in those?
they have, there's the highest ones, or the high ones that I know of, 700
700,
and 1,000 watts.
1,000,
So it could be
okay.
1,000 watts, could be 700 watts.
Okay. What I would actually just double check with you, so obviously I imagine the higher you go, the less intensity you have at the ground level of the
Yeah.
light. So you lose as you go
But
with distance,
that-
correct?
That's right, but as you go higher, you can always increase the wattage of your light.
Right, okay, so you compensate,
Yeah. So normally for standard roadway lights that we use is 50-foot mount height and around 50-foot mount height and 400 watt luminaires. And you always, whatever the client or whatever the person who's going to be maintaining these lights, you want to keep them as similar as possible to what's existing around the area, so they can easily swap out fixtures when they burn out. You don't want to have too many different options. And just a quick note about the foundation, it's more of a structural design. But that foundation is gonna extend further down into the ground. It's not just a pad. A pad will be like kind of 6 inches or something like that. These foundations are made that they, for a 50-foot pole, we use 7 to 8 foot deep foundation that's 2 feet wide, 2 foot diameter. So for these, it's a structural design. I wouldn't know exactly how it is. We have standard foundations that we use for 50-foot poles. So if we had something like a high mast,
Yeah,
I would have to ask a structural designer to,
it becomes sort of like a civil engineering.
yeah, structural design kind of thing. But that's supposed to be, that's to support the weight of the pole and the fixture. And you remember also, when you're going with the arms, the further out you go, the more pressure you can put on that foundation, so the deeper you might have to go there.
Now, does that software, does it do any stress analysis?
No, That's strictly light. Nothing to do with foundations or anything like that. So now in the software, there's a couple of different. There's a few different tools in there that you can use to run the analysis. They have a separate thing for kind of roadway and a separate calculation that you would run for interior building design, because you have the reflections from the walls and all that. So for the roadway design, there's two tools that you would use. One of them is the roadway optimizer. Yeah. You can. So the roadway optimizer, basically what it is it's kind of, because calculation sometimes takes a really long time depending on how many lights you have and how many different grids you have to calculate. So usually if we're going to do a calculation, we're not going to do the whole road. What you do is you, say for example the road is a mile long. And it's 36 feet for a mile long. You don't have to calculate the whole area. What you do is you pick 2 poles in the center, and that will be your calculation grid. Because each point, it has to calculate each point separately. So it's going to take a long time if you have 1,000 or 1,000,000 points. So what we do is we calculate between 2 poles, and that's the typical analysis. If you calculate it here or here, it's going to be the same thing because it's repetition.
Carry it on.
Equal
You could
spacing.
probably do it for more than one section, just to make sure that.
No, we do it for one section.
One section.
Oh,
Yeah.
just one.
But Muhammad,
Just
unless
in the middle though, you don't want, if you go to the edge, then it's a different calculation because
Okay.
you don't have other lights at the same spacing or when you get to the intersection, you do a separate grid for the intersection.
But usually in the middle is the best scenario.
Yeah.
You're running the best scenario.
So
That's the roadway optimization محمد بيحكي عنه. هذا كله part of AGI theory too. There is so many tutorials. We will send you links to tutorials. So we want you to look at it. Why is this is very important for us? Sometimes, we have, usually who does all this calculation? Manufacturer. So they send us all the calculation. We send them some information like the mounting height, the setback, all that kind of information. We send it back to them and they do the calculation. But what we do internally, we want you to be up to speed on that perspective. At least you do your own calculation. And this is by itself, this is a new field. A lot of people get hired just by doing this. And that's what Muhammad, that's what he's been doing for a living, just to do the calculation. You had a question?
I was just gonna ask, what kind of manufacturers you guys deal with, and where are they from here, يعني?
احنا المانيفاكتشر the one we deal with is هذول البوليتيكال questions لزكي. Go ahead.
well, so it's a Canadian company, but they have manufactured in the U.S. So we claim that we have U.S. products.
So are they?
Is that the answer you wanted to hear?
Huh?
They're strictly lights and these kinds of things, or they
And
work with
yeah, they use other companies for control,
Oh,
which I'm
okay.
sure at some point probably they'll make that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but mainly that's their main business.
Okay.
So, as a designer, what you want to do first is once you figure out your roadway size, I would go into the AGI program. I would pick a generic, like I've done so many projects, so I would just go with the standard fixture that I always use. But if you have a specific fixture, you can pick that. So you need to load what's called an IES file into the program. Without that, you can't really do much. So IES file is what it is. It's kind of like an instruction sheet for the program based on the light, the specific light and model that you pick for your design.
It's like the characteristics of that particular light, how it behaves, how the intensity of the light, how it spreads in the different direction. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with antenna and antenna patterns. Okay, it's exactly like that. When in cellular propagation, when you do some RF analysis, some of the guys did it. Okay, I don't know if
That's what we did
we
with
talked
the
about.
If
Yeah.
you guys recall,
that,
he was thinking, he
Right.
was saying the azimuth of the antenna means
yeah.
looking right, looking left. Okay, the access point could be on
means-
the light pole,
Right.
but sometimes the height of it, so you have to consider going down. If you guys remember, ولا مش مذكرين يجي. That's what he did last week.
So anyway, it's called the
And we'll
antenna.
go back to it,
yeah.
and inshallah.
It's the antenna pattern of behavior. So each antenna has its own pattern, right?
Which
How-
is very similar to the
when
IS.
propagates. Yeah, this is something similar. So it's the footprint, the characteristics, the
How the light
what else?
behave.
Yeah. And each light has its own
IS file.
.ies file. And for you to do the analysis in this tool, that's one of the inputs. You know, you can't just do the analysis without this file.
Very good.
So let's say we decided on a IES file or a picture that we're gonna use. We go.
Let's say we decided on our picture.
So
This is one thing we try to make sure all these designers, like Muhammad, to start let him think, oh, let's focus on the LED, let's focus on our manufacturer. So we make sure we are a good friend with Muhammad and the other guys.
Trying to hypnotize them.
once we decide on the picture, we go. Usually they have them uploaded to their website where you can just download an IES file if you want to test it out. So you would go to the website, look for the model of the picture that you're using, and then usually they'll have a link to download the IES file. If they don't, you have to give them a call and ask for it. So once we get the IES file, I guess without the program it's kind of hard to see, but there's an option to if you try to run a calculation, it'll just flat out deny you, so you have to load an IES file first. So you go file, open, you attach this IES file for the job, and the first option you're gonna hit is how's the mounting for the light. So you have to tell it whether it's suspended, hanging, and it's called pendant mounted, pole mounted, will be attached to a pole, or other options like that. A recessed, so it will be exactly like this. The light will be inside a wall. It's called recessed. Or there's a bunch of different options. Or have it doesn't have pictures from, so you might have you don't understand options, just Google it and see an example. So for all the roadway lights, the only options we really have for roadway lighting is either pole mounted or wall mounted, where the wall mounted would only be actually in a tunnel. So we're not really too concerned with that. So it's just a pole mounted result. Alright, so once you select pole mounted, you get the other option to fill in the rest of the data. Now the rest of the data is the mounting height that we discussed, the mast arm length, and it's called the arrangement of the light. So the arrangement of the light is just like how you were saying, the two lights, the yoke, it's called. So you can have. So this is the pole, and these would be the lights. So this would be a single arm. This would be a dual arm. Then you have a lot of other options, but these are the two that we use. You have that yoke one, and then you have the high mast will have, you can put as many as you want, 5 or 6 lights.
That's the foundation.
So
Not the foundation, the core.
yeah. So if we're doing this freeway, let's say we're gonna do to save on money, we're gonna do the medium mounted because we don't want to waste money on these lights on the outside. Alright. So now what you're gonna have to input is, so we know we're just gonna, you have to give the mountain height. So the higher you go, the better distribution you get, but as Zeki said, the lower the intensity is, right? So you have to find the balance between the height and
The power
and
or the wattage.
yeah, and
The wattage,
because what happens is if you get closer to the ground, you're gonna have a really bright spot, and the rest of the area around it's gonna be dimly lit. So you wanna
And
find
dark spots, you
yeah,
will find dark
you wanna
spots.
find the appropriate height that you wanna use that's gonna give you good even distribution around.
Maximum that you can get.
Yeah, so it's
This is
also,
from experience and from trying different
Yeah.
height.
Do usually like states for example, especially for the major roads, do they have certain actually set or recommended heights that you have to?
Yeah, and like, if you're working for a big agency, they'll definitely have standards that they wanna use.
Well, like IDOT and CDOT and those big giant companies, they have all
Yeah.
this is specified for you.
Specify.
So you don't have to think about it.
So when,
Yeah.
when you do the distance between two poles, you do where the light does it intersect, or is
Yeah, the light's gonna overlap, you want the
where
light to
you
overlap.
do want it to
Yeah.
overlap?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is another thing, maybe if you can touch base on the different light, the R2, the R1,
There's different light patterns.
the light pattern itself. Sometimes if you want the light, let's say you're doing sidewalk, you don't want the light to go right and left, you want it just to focus on the street. There is R1, I believe. R2 is going to the right and left. Let's say you want something to consider to the back, you go with R3. Shoots more to the back too.
Yeah. Can
So
you
the-
talk about these?
I know Zaki would love this.
I don't know the specific distribution pattern for each one.
If you guys recall, Brother Basman, when he was talking about the antenna,
Antenna.
he said
Sector.
the sector. He said, let's say I want to just focus on you guys. I don't want to focus on the back. He said, you go with 180. Then Zaki said, there is no such a 180. We're gonna quote him on that. So
I haven't heard of any. I mean,
Yeah.
because usually when you have a 360
And I would-
radius,
I
you
don't-
divide it into
I
120.
can't tell you R1 exactly
I
how
think
it
you
is
just
R1.
make
Oh yeah, I mean, don't quote us on this, but at least there is such a thing in the lighting.
Yeah.
There is such a thing. But later on, inshallah, we will get documents, we will
Yeah,
send you
we'll look.
files, and we will do a real life exam. We will demonstrate it. We will bring, but we need just to make sure the TV is hooked up. But this is by itself, ya shabab, this is totally new business.
Just for the record, بلا شيخ بسمان يزعل علي أنا. What I'm saying is, I personally haven't encountered or seen or heard of 180.
Oh yeah,
So-
no, we're gonna have a debate next time. No, it's okay, brother Basman, we love you.
I love them.
Oh, yeah. So basically, if I recall, we had just R1, then we have R2, R3. This is some of them, we used to call it like a hot dog. Some of them, they shoot more to the front, and there is like different type. We will, inshallah, we will send you a few links on this.
I don't wanna go over this right now because
Okay.
I don't have it memorized, so I can tell you exactly
Yeah.
Which is which?
is the
Yeah.
But but at least there are those.
There
types.
is.
different
Yeah,
types.
yeah.
So
Oh,
when
yeah.
you go and you go to a manufacturer's website, they'll have a cut sheet, a catalog sheet,
The specification.
and usually they'll have the distribution type on there. So it like R1, R2, R3 is kind of the general stuff, but they'll have specifically this light has this pattern. Okay, so you can see that this light is it lights more further away and kind of narrow against the roadway. Another light might be like this shape, where it lights further out but less distance across. So,
Yeah.
so if you have your roadway that's 3 lanes wide, that's pretty wide. You're gonna want something that gets far enough out there to light all 3 lanes. Okay, this one might be good for a single lane. If you have one lane coming and 1 lane going, that might be fine. But if it's a wide roadway, you're gonna need something a little bit bigger. So now, once we go, let's go back to the AGI software.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So now you loaded your IS file, you decided your mountain type. Now you gotta input you selected your arrangement, single, there's the dual arm that you wanna use. Now you gotta give the mast on length, let's say 15 on each side, or 6. And then there's also something called the light loss factor.
LLF. LLF.
So
Light loss factor.
what that is, that's what they consider. So if my light loss factor is 0, that means over time, 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line, my light's gonna still be perfect. It's not gonna lose any output. Okay, that's not realistic. After time, with as the light's being used, it gets weaker, and also the accumulation of dust and other things that kind of clog up the lens is gonna make this increase. So each person kind of gives you a different number what should be used. Like for the LEDs, they're saying it's not gonna be less than 0.9.
Typically with I dot and C dot, they use 0.7, something like that. With 0.75.
0.7.
Okay, 0.7. The LLF. And this is one of the input that you have to put in the software.
This, the LLF, sorry. Because it's 1 if it's perfect.
If it's perfect.
Yeah.
Ideal
So-
case, when you buy the light, it's 1. Should be.
So when you go to manufacturers like Sammy's representation, they tell you it doesn't go less than 0.9. It's 0.95 or 0.99.
But I dot and C dot, they force you to use 0.7.
Yeah, and that's based on
They
old,
take the worst in them.
yeah, that's based on old HPS lights. That they from testing they figure that it's gonna be 0.6, 0.7.
Let's say the light's sitting
0.6.
for 10 years. After then 10 years, from their experience, they said it's going to be 0.7.
Almost half the
So-
output.
So this is really the degradation in the performance of the light. That's how you look at it. It's the degradation. The light is not going to be as bright, as strong, as good as when you
After
put it the
10
first day.
years, yeah.
With time, it's going to lose its intensity.
Uh-huh.
So this is a factor, really. That's
So
what that is.
They force you to use 0.7.
Meaning, I guess what that
So in 10 years,
it's like losing 30% of its
yeah,
if it's point
if it's
0.07,
yeah, it's losing 30% of its
30%.
output.
That's what it's.
So you're assuming when you run your analysis, usually you run it for the worst case scenario. Because you want to guarantee them that this light, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it's going to be doing as good as you need it to be. It's not going to fall short. Alright? So once you put this in, now you're ready to do the calculation. You say you put in your mass on line, you put in your mountain height, the mass on length, the light loss factor, alright, and you selected the arrangement that you want to do.
Arrangement, meaning one light, two heads.
Yeah. So now you say you've inputted all the information that you need to, you hit OK, and what's going to come up is another table that you have to fill out. It's kind of like a calculator for you. You could either give it the spacing that you want to test out, or you could tell it to figure out the spacing based on the light and this information that you give it. You also have to input one more information. You have to put the layout type. That's, remember we said we chose median mounted. So now you have to put that in, and then you have to put the setback. So how far away from the road is it going to be? So if it's
How far the pole away from the road?
yeah. So
That's the setback.
So let's go back to the roadway. So we had 1, 2, 3 lanes. We had a shoulder, and we had the lights mounted here. So we gave it the setback.
No, they can't. They can't eat until they study.
We gave
Pass
it
the
the
exam.
map.
If you want, I can leave it up for you, but just let me know, okay?
Oh, thank you, thank you.
So now, say I wanted to figure out the spacing in between. So I run my calculation with just this information in there, and with the setback I gotta put in, and then it's gonna spit out you also gotta put in what level that you want it to be at. So that, remember that 0.9 that we said? We tell it we want a lighting level of 0.9 average. It also has for the minimum, the maximum, the average to minimum. That's kind of the uniformity of light distribution.
So not to confuse this 0.9 with the LLF, this is the foot candle.
Yeah.
just to make sure.
This one.
Is there a unit for the LLF?
It's a ratio, so
Yeah.
So you hit calculate, and then it's gonna tell you what the spacing should be between them to get this value. If it won't work out, it'll just give you the best spacing, but it'll show it in red, so it tells you it's not meeting even at this spacing.
Not meeting the 0.9 FC.
Yeah. It'll be a lot easier once you see the program.
Oh yeah, we will show you
It
the
will
program.
make more sense
Okay.
right now.
خلونا سامحونا هسه خلونا wrap it up. هسه في يوتيوب بس احنا كنا نقدرش we can hook it up. We can.
حط على اللابتوب في النص.
But yeah, you can put it in iPad. It's better than iPhone.
طب حطوا اطلعوا
Yeah.
اشبكوا
Oh, that's-
بس اكتبوا
Like flat.
AGI Series 2 tutorial.
So should we pause?
يا خلص